like I was saying, I had this guy on the podcast before you it was a 10 out of 10. So
Okay.
my hope is you're going to be a 3 out of 10. I was thinking it was probably going to be a 2 out of 10, but if you've been a 3 out of 10 your whole life, this is
Well,
going to be better than expected.
we'll see. We'll see.
Exactly. We will see. We'll let the audience decide how good this really is.
I wanted more scripted. I mean, because, talking to you is a little bit difficult because if I have to be nice to you, nobody's going to know, or no, everyone's going to know it's not genuine. So,
I almost didn't invite you, and I'm regretting it.
Representing Franchise Secrets, Eric Von Horn.
Scotty D, welcome back to the show.
thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
That was the official introduction.
That's the best we
You
can
have
do.
been
Huh?
on before. This wasn't the last one that you were on. Didn't we have a chicken come
I
on to
mean,
the
you know
show?
what? Actually, I forgot about that till Angie reminded me last night. She's like, "You've been on Eric's podcast." I'm like, "What? Wait, what?" I didn't really take that very serious.
Yeah, that was.
I was not the star of that show. I think it was your farm animal.
Yeah,
So
I know the part. We've been the girls the other day. They wanted to. They were on Facebook Marketplace and they're like, "Oh, look at the Highlander cow." It's like $3 or $4 or $5 or $10,000. I don't remember what it was. And they were like, "It's a great deal, Dad." And I'm like, "No." Answer is no. And I had my wife tell me before, like, you can say no to us, and you probably should say no to us all the time. But in the heat of the moment, they're like, "Dad, look
I
at
know.
it." And so I said no. And then 3 days later, all of a sudden we had another like barn cat show up. But this one wasn't like the last one that had a bullet in it
Oh,
and
no.
wouldn't get near us and was a good mouser. I love barn cats that are like to stay 500 feet from us and eat mice. Those are the best barn cats. This one like came up right away and started like rubbing up against the girls and would pet it. So it was somebody's pet at some point. So
Right.
like the girls do with all of these barn cats and animals that they find, they take them straight to the vet so we can rack up some vet bills.
Yep.
And no microchip. Don't know whose it is, but now it's up to date on shots and is now not a barn cat, but the garage cat. And
Mhm.
I'm just going to try to hold strong so it never comes inside because it comes in once, then
Yeah.
like
It's
it's
over.
over. And
It's
I'm a
over.
dog guy. I'm a
Well, that's
dog
why I
guy.
like bringing my kids love coming out to your place, and I mean, just because we can get our fill of all the animals and and then I can leave and let you guys deal with all the work. So, no, it's incredible. But that's why I do this show virtually because I'm afraid of what you might bring out.
Well, tell us how to take care of dogs. Like, what do you do to take really good care of dogs? How do you keep dogs alive, Scott? Why don't you tell the audience how you're so good at that?
Oh my gosh. Well, anybody that's got a lab understands like this, they just eat anything and everything. And so, yeah, I mean, it's silly, but you know what? When your lab eats, two entire bags of Halloween candy, that ends up being a pretty good vet bill. And, when your dog eats 5 full packs of chewing gum, I mean, that ends up being a fairly good vet bill. So we're good at, I mean, we're good at keeping him alive. So that's good. But if I could just train him not to eat everything inside.
We're also good at keeping the vets in
Yeah,
business
right.
here in
I know.
Spearfish.
I
All
know. I
right.
mean, it's just it is what it is. When you own animals, you got kids. I mean, it's
Oh yeah,
impossible.
it's part of it. It's part of it. All right. I asked you to come on the show again because your last show was like the lowest rated show. I'm like, we got to do better. We got to do better. Oh, so this is another chance for you to try to get better ratings.
I
And I'll
said
make sure
you've got
that
to wait till people are actually listening to your show before it
uh,
makes sense to have me on. So maybe
all right. What I think is interesting about you were in the insurance business for a long time, and then you bought an existing business, and then you've been a franchisee, but then you bought an existing franchise. So, what I really want to focus on today is like when you were in the insurance business, why did you buy that existing business? And then let's kind of compare and contrast buying existing businesses, franchise versus non-franchised.
Sure.
So where do you want to start?
Yeah, I
You
mean, I
go.
guess I can kind of just answer that question a little bit, and then just stop me if I get going too far. But I was a career insurance consultant. I was in the employee benefits world, and it was a great career, great income, but it was W-2, and I mean, so it was a great way for me to establish a good income, get ourselves in a good spot financially, and it just sales is that kind of vehicle to where you can make as much money as you want, right? But I also always looked at myself as an entrepreneur, and I was a W-2. I worked for a big insurance company. I was never going to own that company, and so the blessing was that the insurance business gave me a lot of freedom. It gave me a lot of flexibility, and so I could go out and make a really good income, but still never miss my kids' events, and I would have time to work on other projects. And so really it was kind of that process of deciding, okay, I don't want to be W-2 forever. Like that's not the goal. And so that's when I started looking at other opportunities, found a management company that was kind of in a position that they were looking, that the owners were looking to get out. They were getting, closer to retirement, and it had some operators in place. And so kind of on purpose by accident, I found a business that already was an existing business. I knew that I could get into this, and, seemed easy at the time, obviously, but just keep the employees and just keep it running. And so that's what I did. It worked out pretty good. But huge learning curve when you lose a key employee and you've got a full-time income or a full-time business, or I'm sorry, a full-time W-2 and a full-time business that's running. And so, I've just had to really get good at putting key people in place to manage that company. And that's been really what kind of set me on that entrepreneurial journey. And so, then it's, getting in touch with Eric Van Horn and getting into franchising and looking at other ways to just sort of be as absentee as possible. And then, fast forward several years, and I've now left that full-time career. And so I'm just working on the projects that I want to work on now. And so it was just, it's one of those things. You can either jump off the ledge and go into a franchise and be an owner operator and leave your job, or I just really felt like I want to do it gradually because I didn't want to take some of those risks, right? I had 3 kids and my wife, and I mean we knew where we wanted to go, I guess. And that's kind of it was about a 4 or 5 year journey to get there.
So full-time insurance, making really good money. And then when you bought describe what that management company is and describe a bit about the size of it back then versus the size today, whatever metrics you
Yeah.
want to use.
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, in pretty simple terms, it's a property management company, but it's a little bit more complex than just a market rent property management company, because it focuses. We right now we're exclusively in the senior living and disabled living, rural development funded property. So it's either rural development or HUD. They essentially subsidize those folks to live in these apartment communities, and so it has a lot higher amount of compliance involved, a lot of maintenance, because the buildings, they're a lot of these projects are older. And then we're just dealing with a clientele that needs a lot of help, because it's a lot of time it's people who retire and then they're living on their social security, and so they're able to move into these income based facilities. But then it's our job every year to help them determine what their allowance is, and how much they're going to have to pay for their rent based on if their income changes. And so when we bought it, I mean, I've probably close to doubled the number of units under management. We've entered another state or two. And it's just, again, like, that was a big learning curve too, because being able to really lean on people that were better at certain things than I was, right? And so that giving up some of that control was really hard, because I think we're all control freaks, and if we're honest, And so to be able to grow that company while still kind of having to take care of all of my responsibilities, I had to find those good people. And I've been able to, by and large, been able to do that. And so, now it's a company where, it's basically running on its own. I'm checking in maybe once a week with my CEO. I've got, we've got 15 to 20 employees total. Um, Dealing with all of those different facets of the business. And so yeah, I mean, it's been kind of a, I mean, it's a lot. We have a situation, you remember several years ago, we had a huge flood in Spearfish, and we had a bunch of units get flooded out. And I mean, that was a major crisis here. We had the Red Cross involved. We had, I mean, it was a big deal. And so it has not been completely stress free. I can tell you that. But I mean, it's just the learning experiences going through those challenges is also invaluable. And so that's kind of was my first and has been the backbone of kind of like launching a lot of the things that I've done, getting into real estate investments and getting into, franchising and all of those things. It's just, it kind of taught me how to delegate and how to go out and find people to do the things that either I didn't want to do or the things that I knew I wasn't very good at.
So when you say real estate investing, what kind of real estate investments have
Mhm.
you
Well, physical real estate. I mean, obviously, I love physical real estate. So I own a couple of different commercial buildings. We own, some just residential rentals. I'm not, a real estate mogul by any means, but I've just found opportunities sort of in our areas. For instance, the franchise that we bought in Rapid City, we had an opportunity a couple of years after buying the business to then buy the real estate, and so being in a position to be able to do that was a huge advantage to us. And so just strategically trying to get into real estate on the physical side, but then, you know, going down going down that avenue of then, okay, well, what about just real estate investments? What about real estate funds? Those are the types of things then that, I know you and I have had a lot of discussion about that stuff over the years. And so just I guess I would it's kind of there's just such a range of things that I've found interest in, and that can be a curse too.
So I was just talking to Mitch, who has some apartments, multifamily, and he made a comment like he uses those and helps him become more bankable, helps him if he needs to pull out cash and different things. So for you, real estate and business, someone talk to the person that doesn't have any real estate, and they're like, this is interesting. Has it helped you become more bankable? Has it helped you from a cash position or the ability to have some lines of credit, or where has having real estate been beneficial as an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, it's there's an advantage in everywhere you turn with real estate, because not only can you get such an advantage if you're a high income earner, especially if you have a lot of passive income, most of your audience is going to understand this, but just the buying of real estate and the tax advantages just in getting into the real estate can be so big. And then if you can find other people that are taking care of your mortgage and it's cash flowing, you're just creating the opportunity to use that as, like you said, a line of credit for another opportunity or potentially another piece of real estate. And so it's the best vehicle that I've found to be able to just kind of be able to, use your money multiple ways. But really the tax side of it has been, eye opening and just huge for me over the years.
Why is that important? Because I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs in franchising and outside of franchising. They don't think about tax the way that you and I think about tax. They don't have a CPA that is also a tax strategist. They haven't been around Justin Donald and all of his friends and the
Right.
experts that he bring in, all the people that you and I have had the opportunity to be able to be around. So to the entrepreneurs out there, Scott, that are just thinking, I pay as little as I can in taxes, but they still have, you know, six-figure tax bills, or they have large percentage of their income going to taxes. Like,
Hmm.
how important is tax strategy? How have you been able to legally avoid paying a bunch of
Right.
taxes.
Right. Well, that has been one of the biggest learning curves over the last, say, 7 to 10 years is just being able to have that tax strategy. And like you said, if you don't have somebody right now that you can meet with in, say August, September, and start to kind of have that plan of like, what is my tax liability going to look like? That's number one. Like, you just have to find that person right away. Like, they just have to know you. I always say, I mean, you have to be really close with a banker and an attorney, and then your CPA is critical. And so that's been a big unlock for me is realizing that if I have to pay X thousands of dollars in taxes, but I can, shift that a different way and save that. I mean, that people work really hard to make income, and then just to give a bunch of it away, it's just really hard to swallow once you understand that process. And so, I just make it a habit of meeting with my CPA at certain times of towards the end of the year, getting a strategy in place, whether that is taking cash and putting it into, an oil and gas investment to bring down taxable income, or shift income other ways, or if it makes sense, buying a piece of real estate, because I mean, obviously what you're doing is creating a little bit more work year after year because you've got to keep doing that, but that's just kind of that's just part of the process. It's interesting. My daughter, she started a business here a couple of
Hey,
years ago.
no self promotion
No,
of
no, 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 no. But I
come
wanted this.
on.
This is a fun.
I'm gonna cut this thing. I'm gonna cut this podcast off. I'm
No,
just
it's
gonna go. Actually, I'm gonna go get your daughter on the
see,
podcast.
this is why I knew this wasn't going to work talking to you, because they're just, we can't be friendly together. It just doesn't seem right. So no, but it was a great experience for me to teach her something, because she doesn't have a lot of expenses yet. She's making
Well,
really
wait.
good money.
Tell the audience like what kind of business your daughter started. Like she was a
Well, th-
star
th-
high school athlete that went to college to play basketball, had
Mhm,
some injuries, and had some
mhm.
big decisions to make.
Right.
And like, give a little bit of that story because it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, yeah, and that wasn't where I was trying to go. I mean, there's no promotion here. It was more of a
I'm
tax,
teasing
but
you, man. I
but
think this is
I know you are,
awesome.
but
I love this.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
I'm
So
purposely asking you
I
because
know,
other entrepreneurs have, you know, kids out there, and
right?
I think it's amazing what she's done. So really, I do want you to dig into that a little bit as you tie that back into tax.
Sure. Okay. I'll do my best. So yes. So she did. Her goal was to go on scholarship to play basketball. Long story short, she had, a couple knee injuries, and it was just, one of those situations where, she had got to the end of her freshman year of basketball, had re-injured her knee, and decided that, what, that wasn't going to be the path. And so that was great. She was also a very good student. School was very important, but her other passion was in photography and videography and those types of things. And so she came home for the summer, kind of leaned into that locally here, and it just sort of took off. And so, within 3 months of her being home, like, she had a legitimate business that was just, I could see it building. We could just see it going and going. And so she made the decision to not go back to school, and we fully supported that because we could see that she was going to be giving up a bunch of opportunities to go back. And obviously, as an entrepreneur and, somebody that wasn't the greatest student, I mean, she was a way better student than I was. Um, I thought that was great. You can always go back to college, right? And so she had a direction, she had something she was really passionate about, and that's what she did. And so fast forward about 2 years, and she's built this into a legitimate cash heavy business, right? And so she doesn't have a lot of expenses. She's doing tons of photo shoots, she's doing tons of social media content creation, all of those things. Well, she I'm sorry if that's me, but um she got to a point now where, she's making really good income. She doesn't have a lot of expenses. She came to me at the end, just a month or two ago, and said, this is what my accounting software tells me I'm going to pay in taxes. And I said, well, welcome to the real world. Right. And so I said, okay, well, let's sit down. Let's see if there's anything we can do. And so, we were able to, just through understanding and like my limited understanding of these topics, we were able to shift some income here. We were able to open a little retirement account for her. We were able to do, about 2 or 3 things by me, talking to the CPA, talking to a financial advisor, and we were able to eliminate probably 80% of her tax liability, just by being strategic, right? It didn't cost her anything. She was able to save some money putting some money away and, you know, prepaying for a few things, just little things that to you and me don't seem like a big deal. But I told her, I said, you know, I'm there's just so few people that pay attention to these things as they're building their business. And so, if I can save you X amount of dollars in taxes and we can put some of it in retirement and we can do this, like you're just setting yourself up for so much success. And that was like, it was super fun for me to be able to do. Right. And so I think hopefully it opened her eyes and, give her a little bit of perspective on, you know, the value of those strategies too. Um, but it's like hunting for strategies is kind of the way that I look at it, right?
Exactly. I should get a tax strategist. I have a tax strategist GPT. I should get that out to at least the
Mm,
mastermind group, maybe to
yeah.
everybody, because it's my thought partner with tax strategy. I've fed it so many of the different things that you and I've learned, and then I test things against it. Then I go to my CPA, which is the same
Mhm.
CPA that you have, and I'm like, can I do this?
Yeah.
How? No, I don't say can I. I say, how do I do
Right.
this? How do
Yeah.
I do this? How do I? And he's like, you can't. You can't. This is the reason. But I do want to understand the reason, because then I can come back to, ask other smart people, because I was around some
Right.
really smart tax strategists. End of last year at the lifestyle and tribe of investor retreat, we had some
Mhm.
amazing tax strategists in there. So I
Mhm.
was testing what I was getting from my CPA against them to see if there's a
Mhm.
different angle.
Right.
And you should always be doing that. Everybody should always be doing that. So many people are paying way too much in taxes. So
Well,
yeah,
I
go ahead.
think you I'm sorry, but I think you said it exactly right, and it's sort of like what I'm trying to live by for everything. It's not can I do it, it's how can I do it? And that's not just for taxes, that's for everything, right? Like I think it's like a mindset shift of, how can I create this much income, this way, or how can I save X amount in taxes? Because it's just something to, if you're looking for it, you're going to find it, just that way in so many different areas of life.
So the Scott Duncan of 7, 8 years ago
Mm.
versus today, what do you think? How much less are you paying in taxes because of the different strategies, the different levers
Well,
that you can pull? I don't have to have a dollar amount, because I
yeah,
know it's in the tens of millions of dollars of tax savings for you. Uh,
close, close.
but no, just give us a sense. Like,
Yeah.
you have the information today where you didn't have it 7 years ago. Both of us do.
Mhm. Right.
Um, like, give it like real percentages. Like, how much more do you think you're saving in taxes these days?
I mean, I would say from the time I was, a W-2 income earner with some additional income on the side and now being, mostly entrepreneurial income, I gotta say 80%, Eric. I
80%
mean,
less.
yeah. I mean, income is significantly higher. Actual dollars paid in taxes is significantly lower. I mean, I wasn't ready to really answer that question, but I would say, 70, 80%. And we both know people that make, a lot more income than probably both of us combined, and they probably pay less dollars in taxes than we do. I think the thing that, and again, the people that are listening to your podcast are going to understand this. You're not trying to cheat the government. You're not trying to do anything else. There's so many reasons that the IRS allows you to save those taxes, right? Because you're improving in other things. If we're buying real estate for rental reasons, if we're investing in oil and gas, if we're buying an additional franchise, there's so many value added things for other people. And so I think that's sort of the other thing that is hard for some people to understand before they're educated is, okay, you're just trying to not pay your responsible amount of taxes. Well, that's just not the way that I would look at it.
No, the government uses the tax code to incentivize business owners to be
Yes.
able to invest and or
Mhm.
put capital into the things that they want you to. So
Right.
you have to understand that first, and then you start to look at taxes differently. And they're like, how are
Mhm.
they incentivizing me to save this money? And it's not always like I just get to write this off, or I just get
Mhm.
to put this code in and this tax liability goes away. No, you have to put some money somewhere, and then you
Yes.
can get some tax savings. Or or even, I do it through a pension plan. There's levers that I can
Mhm.
pull through a pension plan. You can do it through all kinds of different things, through, like you were talking about with oil and gas, and just even real estate in general, being a qualified
Yep.
real estate professional, all
Right.
kinds of different levers that you can pull. But the point is, you save where you had $100,000 tax bill 7 years ago, and today it's 20,000. Like, if those are the numbers, now you have $80,000 to invest into
Mhm.
marketing, into another employee, or whatever
Mhm.
it is, to continue to grow that business, or another location, which will give you more tax savings. If it's like brick and mortar, you leverage that with financing, and then you have accelerated depreciation. Like, that's how all of that works. So I guess what I'm saying is, I encourage people to not just listen to their CPA and the
And
fear driven CPAs that are trying to avoid audits. Like, that's not the goal, to
yes.
avoid an audit. Like, and I say that because I've been through an audit, and my goal wasn't to avoid an audit at all costs. The goal was to be able to come out of an audit like feeling good,
Right.
and be able to defend the things
Yeah.
that I chose to do. And I
Right.
did. I've been through an audit. Some of these things that I have entrepreneurs say, my CPA says this is an audit risk, and this will never pass an audit. I'm like, well, I've been audited, and this strategy, that strategy held up. Like, it was totally fine. So it tells me too many people are using the wrong CPAs, and you can tell I get
Well,
passionate about
and
this.
and so many people are worried about what that CPA, what are they going to cost? Like, how much does it cost? And and I hate for our CPA to listen to this, because I don't want him to really hear this part of it. But I mean, I don't think either you or I are nickel and diming him to make sure that we're saving that extra hour, because we're seeing like what the value of that is. And so yeah, I mean, if your CPA is telling you that, hey, let's just meet after the first of the year and get me all your tax stuff, like, you just have the wrong person, right? Like, you really should be meeting with somebody, whether it's quarterly or whether it's just at least, the fourth quarter of every year, to start planning. Because yeah, I mean, there's things you can do, but you can't always do them after the fact. And so yeah, it's an investment, I guess. Maybe he can lower the rates a bit for us. Just
Yeah, you should. Well, I'm gonna give him a shout. I'm not gonna give him a shout out. I'm gonna give like Justin Donald, go to Lifestyle Investor. He's got a free community right now. I would join that. Garrett Gunderson, he's got some free community, puts out a lot of good content. And then Tom Wheelwright, I think, as a CPA. All three of those are probably good resources. I want to give resources to people to go learn, and just to start getting this kind of information. So there's three of them for everyone. Attention, franchisors and franchisees. There are two really important resources that I want to share with you that will help you avoid costly mistakes and increase your enterprise value. The first is our free Facebook group. It's a community that has over 4,000 franchisees and franchisors in it. When somebody asks a question, they get honest and authentic answers from multiple perspectives. You can join the group for free over at franchisesecrets.com/Facebook. The second resource I want to share with you is, if you're a franchisee and you want to be around a community of successful Z's and other brands and in other industries, this is why I created the Franchisee Mastermind. If you want access to the best single and multi-unit owners to know what they're doing, or if you want to be around other multi-brand owners, then you'll want to check out my Franchisee Mastermind. The reason why people join is they want access to my Rolodex, my connections, to each other. They want a shortcut success, both short-term and long-term. Links will be in the show notes or at scalablefranchise.com. Let's shift gears. This is boring to some people until they're taking advantage of it, and then this gets exciting, the whole tax thing.
for
But
sure.
you've done first of all, no, let me go here. You had high W-2, making a lot of money with a W-2. You had a business, and then you bought an existing franchise. tell me about like why not double down on your existing business? Why buy an existing franchise? Like what was the thought process there?
Yeah. I had interest in getting into franchising because you just said it was pretty much plug and play and very easy. And
So
so,
easy. Yeah, it's
I
the
mean,
easiest thing in the
you
world.
write a check and then you like money just starts showing up. And so,
Mailbox money.
yeah, I mean,
Like
if
money
you
grows
let,
on trees. It's a franchise tree. It just grows
yeah,
without having to do any work at all.
right, right. Well, I mean, and let me back up. I mean, I don't know how much you want to go into, but prior to
Well,
us buying,
however deep you want to
well,
go, Scott.
well, I mean, and this is something that you and I can both talk about in relation to because prior to us buying the one you're talking about, you and I had gotten into some franchising opportunity together, right? And so, I had, in all honesty, like I had listened to you. I mean, you and I are friends. I've known you for a long time, and I just wanted to know more about what you were doing. And so we got together and decided to do some stuff together, right? Well, fast forward, a lot of people that know us know the story, but we grand opened a franchise out of state. What was it, February of 2020? After building up membership, all of the things. I mean, and so really, I mean, within weeks, the county shut the doors on every business in this industry, and with a lot of other businesses, right? And so, like like my first experience into franchising with the franchise guru Eric Van Horn was working really hard and learning a ton and going through the pre-sale and the grand opening and all that thing, and then all of a sudden COVID just completely destroyed that business. I mean, in many ways that was a 1 or 2 year, probably more like a 2 to 3 year struggle to just to keep that stabilized, keep it going, keep employees, until we could find an exit route for that business. Right. And
And
so,
to chime in there, keeping it stabilized meant us putting money into our own
right,
money into the
right.
business.
Yeah. So now imagine I'm, I would say, fairly successful in my business. I bought another company that was doing pretty well, growing. I got into franchising because it's so easy. And now I'm writing checks, right? We're writing checks every month just to make sure we're paying the payroll and we're taking care of the employees and making sure nobody gets hurt. And that was really a difficult time, honestly, though. And it's hard when you hear people say like, okay, you learn lessons through failures but I can say now, looking back, I mean, the amount that I learned going through that process was, I think, invaluable. I mean, someday I'm maybe gonna be thankful for that whole experience. But that was such a big pivotal moment for me because we got to a point where we had to make some really tough decisions, right? And we had to do some things, but we always did the right thing. I feel like between the two of us, we always did the right thing as much as we could for the people that were helping us. But it was just something that we had to go through and we had to get through, and we did. So that was a big learning experience. And then we turned that into something that's turning out to be really good. So that happened prior to then us finding another business here, a little more locally, that is a franchise as well. But that one just fit between my wife Angie and I. It just fit our what we were looking for really good because it was a cash flowing business. It was available, same situation, people that were looking to get maybe retired. We could look at this business and say, okay, it's a franchise, but also it's just a really good local small business that we can run pretty much hands off with. My wife takes care of that business and she loves it. Takes her 1 or 2 days a week, maybe to physically to be there. Um, and we were able to really bring a lot of value add to that business as well. So really come in, bring new systems, bring more technology, and just from day one, I think we made it, maybe even a little more profitable than it had been before. And so it's just, there's just no easy way to do any of this stuff. You just kind of have to go through the good with the bad, and you can't give up, right? And that's one thing I learned also about business ownership is when things go bad, you don't just get to walk away, right? You don't just say, I don't like my boss, I don't like this situation, I'm out. And so you have to take every day and just get through it, right? And that's the value in the end, I think.
You, it wasn't a distress sale. It was a good sale where it was, like
Right.
you said, cash flowing, but you still had levers that you could pull to make it more profitable and,
Right.
make more money. Um, how and then there was, the opportunity to buy the existing building that it was in. Remind me, was that part of the deal where they had an option to buy it, or was that something that was, negotiated later?
It was negotiated later. Now we knew that the company that owned the real estate, um, when we were buying the business, we had a pretty strong feeling that eventually that they would want to maybe be willing to sell the real estate. And so we didn't know that it wasn't part of the deal. There was no guarantees, but we really felt strongly that that might be coming down the road, which was another a huge benefit for us because not only was this business already successful, it had already been in existence for 8 or 10 years. um, we were able to work out a really interesting seller financing deal, like all of the things. And again, that's a whole nother avenue that we can talk about is how to strategically buy businesses, how to strategically buy real estate, those things. But it was just such a win-win for us because we felt like day one, it's going to take care of itself, as far as cash flow wise. It was a win-win, I think, for the sellers. And and then we had a strong feeling that within maybe 3 to 5 years, we'd have an opportunity to buy the building also. And that's kind of just what happened.
When did you buy the building? How long ago?
No, Eric. Um, maybe
3
three
years
years
ago?
ago now. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, um, what was the value of the building then, and what's the value of it now?
Yeah, interesting story too, because this was another huge leverage point for us. Is we bought the business, and one of the things when we were buying the business. Go ahead. You had a
No, no,
question.
this you didn't have an option on it, but you had leverage.
We had leverage, and because we owned the business, and so and that was another huge learning thing for us too. Is like when you're negotiating leases and when you're getting into businesses with real estate you don't own, like it's so important to make sure the type of like lease that you have. And so the lease that we had was, I mean, we had 20, 25 years lease. It was a guaranteed transferable lease. It was again something we had to make sure of when we bought the business because we knew the real estate might turn over. We hoped that we could buy it, but we weren't 100% sure. Well, we needed to make sure if they sold the building that our lease was solid, right? No matter what. And we did that. And so when they came to us to give us first option to buy the building, it was, oh my gosh, this building's going to go really fast. Like you guys have an opportunity to buy it first. If you decline, it's going on the market. It's going to sell like this, right? And they gave us their asking price. Well, because of the leverage and because of the lease that we had, I knew that they couldn't sell it out from under us and change the lease, right? Because I was legally protected. So I did the math and I did the figures and I went back to them and said, okay, if I was a real estate investor and I was making X amount of revenue on this building and it's full, with us, this is how much this building's worth. And this is how much we will buy it for. And you know what? They took it almost instantly. And it was over, it was several $100,000 less than what they said they were going to list it for. But again, like I knew no good real estate investor is going to come in and buy it for this when they can only, get this certain amount of revenue from it. And so again, it was just knowing and understanding those things ahead of time that gave us that leverage. So I would say, I don't know what the building's exactly worth now. I mean, it kind of has the same issue, right? So right now, what I'm in the process of doing is how do I make the real estate worth as much as possible, even though we're still the tenants in the business for the most part? And so, I don't know exactly how much appreciation, but it's downtown, right in the middle of downtown. I think it's a pretty safe win for us
I bet
eventually.
it's gone up at least 25%.
I think that'd be easy. Yeah, for sure, for sure.
Well, it's a couple
Um,
100,000, two to $300,000
yeah.
of below market value. When I say market value, if it was not leased.
Well, yeah, and those are the levers that we're looking at pulling now. Long term, I'm talking to really smart real estate, commercial real estate people to say, okay, here's our situation. We have the business, we have the building. You know, do we shift? Do we pay more towards the lease? Let make less money in the business so that we're those are the kinds of things that are planning for the long term. I want to be able to say one day the real estate is really the big win in this whole thing, possibly. And so, I'm not trying to keep the lease as minimal as possible to our own business. It's just, but again, it gave us the flexibility to do a lot of things. And like you said, if I need to, I could go get a line of credit from that tomorrow, right? If I needed cash for something else. And so it's just so many different advantages in
So I
one.
want entrepreneurs, franchisees to start thinking, differently. Think of like what are opportunities besides just cash flowing the current location. Like if you are getting into any brick and mortar, what he and Angie did is they had a long-term lease signed that and it was actually the owners before that negotiated that,
Yeah.
which turned
Yeah.
out to be extremely valuable for
Yes.
Scott and Angie, which that's probably one of the reasons they felt comfortable buying the business in general. And they knew that could turn into an opportunity down the road, but they were protected with rent for a long time. That could create an opportunity down the road. It did create an opportunity down the road that they were able to take advantage of. And I think any franchisee can do the same thing. Now, in this particular franchise, I know franchisees that are just renting. Then I also know franchisees that have made a fortune by doing what you're talking about. They would buy the building, then put in the franchise. And so I just want franchisees to be thinking differently. Maybe it's bigger, maybe it's just differently, but there are other opportunities to make money besides just cash flowing the business itself.
Well, and that's one thing about franchising that's fantastic. I mean, it's really good, I think, at building wealth, but sometimes it takes a while for the cash flow to follow. I mean, would you agree with that,
Yeah,
Eric? I
yeah.
mean, especially when you're just trying to build, franchising is such a tool to help build your wealth and hopefully build cash flow. But I like to find ways to stabilize cash flow outside of my businesses, because it's not always the most friendly cash flow wise, depending on what the business is. And um so I think it's the other franchise that we're building is obviously we're not owning any of the brick and mortar. We're going into commercial leases in large strip centers and things like that, and that's just another strategy completely. And so it just I guess I probably I don't know. A doctor could probably, tell me what I have, but I just have a lot of shiny object syndrome, and so I, try to really focus on, instead of like buying it's a different business. It's like, what's the system? I want systems and processes so that it doesn't really matter what the business is or what the business sells. It's, can we create a system that is really repeatable, and it's, hopefully the cash flow comes after that, right? But it's more about safety and optionality.
All right. I have just a couple more minutes left before I have to jump to a call.
Okay.
This reminds me of this other business that we're starting at Front Street. We're going to be the franchisor. You know about it, by the way. You know about this one. It could fit into the current building that you have. You
Mm-hmm.
can't say anything about the
Okay.
business, but you can say something about the model. And it's similar to what you're already doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I think this other thing might be the one where people could get into the real estate. Very, very semi-absentee, like what you currently have. And there's very few businesses out there like that. It's definitely more of a real estate type play. But if you got into that one, would you be looking for, and say it's out of state, would you be looking for real estate deals with that one? Like, how would you be thinking about that one if you were going into it as a franchisee? Because you're not going into class A real estate. You're going into other strip centers that are, maybe up and coming areas. You don't have to be in the roughest of areas, but it doesn't matter. You can go into a Whole Foods anchored center, a Walmart anchored center, or a neighborhood where there's a Walmart anchored center, and you could go into a normal strip center. So if you were going into a business like that, how would you be thinking about that to have a possible a real estate portfolio out of that deal?
Yeah, I mean that's a good question. I think that one really could work well both ways, Eric, because and maybe it's a matter of trying to test it out in a market, if you can find a good spot for it. Doesn't like you said, I don't think this one has to be an A plus location. And so if you found, I would maybe look at it two different tracks. If I could find the right real estate for the right price and based on the projections of the business, is it a good deal? Then 100%, right? Because you're always going to be happy owning the real estate, I think. Now, I would also look at it like, okay, well, if for some reason this business isn't as good as what I want it to be, is this real estate something that could be valuable for something else? That's always the way that I would look at real estate if you're going to buy it commercially, right? Is like, what are the options for it? But if you have a business you can already put into it, it's just a win-win. So yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think I would look at it both ways. I would look for, if you could find the right lease at the right price, and especially then if I wanted to eventually get into real estate, then I'm going to be looking at the angles for, how long do I have to, what are my options for the lease? I want to be protected in case I want to stay there for 20 years, but do I have triggers and ways that I could potentially get out in 5? If I wanted to, if the business goes really well and I wanted to move it into my own real estate. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's kind of that thinking outside the box always. Um, and I've
That's
just learned to
perfect.
try to look 5 years into the future, no matter what I'm doing, because there's so many times we jump into things and then we don't really have an out, right? Or a strategy.
I think that's what I wanted to do. I didn't well, can't talk about the brand right now, but it's very vague, but that's kind of on purpose. So we could talk about like it as an opportunity. Because some of you out there right now probably have this type of opportunity. Like you were like, oh, that sounds kind of like my brand. Maybe I should be thinking about it. Doesn't mean you have to buy the real estate today or negotiate it today. You can always go to the landlord like, hey, I'm interested. If you ever sell this, I want to be the first one that you call, like Scott got the call, or negotiate that lease in a way that makes it a lot more valuable for you to be the buyer versus somebody else to be the buyer. Lots of different ways that you can do it. The way that it was done with the original owner where Scott's was, it was a low risk thing for the owner to do to be able to negotiate that lease, but it turned into a lot of leverage for Scott when he eventually bought it. Last question, Scott. You quit you quit a high paying W2 um, uh, income source, job. I don't know what you want to call it, but
Right.
you had
Career, 19,
flexibility,
19
career,
year career. Yeah. Right.
career. You quit. That's real money gone.
Yeah.
Like I've done the same thing when I was younger though. I quit, job that was paying me, 200,000. I've quit jobs that were paying me, not jobs. I quit careers that
Right.
were paying me $1 million a year in income. Like I quit because I wanted to do something different. What was that like for you to actually just quit and give up that money?
Yeah, I mean, it was tough, Eric, and you know that because we had a lot of discussions over coffee about that exact thing. But I had to finally get to the point where, I spent, and again, it didn't happen overnight, right? I mean, it was a system in my mind. I knew where I wanted to be, and I just didn't know how long it would take. Well, as I got closer, then I started to say, okay, it's obviously replace as much of that income as possible. Know that if I had more time, I think I could, I could fill in the gaps, I could grow even further. But it's easy to say that, right? In theory. And then when you get to that place where you've told yourself that you need to get to, then it's really hard because you do have, I mean, when we finally made that decision, I had to just tell myself, okay, I'm not happy with what I'm doing, right? And so it isn't 100% about the money anymore, right? I wanted to make sure that we were secure. I wanted to make sure that everything was going to be fine, but I knew that this was going to be a huge step back as far as just my flexibility, right? What I've tell people is what I did is I took a hit in the flexibility I had with my income, right? I was able to do more investing and more this and maybe buy a piece of real estate. I knew that I was going to have to take a little bit longer to get back to that. Um, but in reality, through so many of the advantages of business ownership, what I found is that like even like the tax strategy we talked about. I mean, I maybe saved more in taxes by not having a W-2 income, which made up some of the little bit of the difference there. I was able to create some of the things that I'm working on now to create other cash flow opportunities that I really wanted to do. And so to answer your question, I mean, it's scary and I don't know what the right thing to do, but I think I just had to get real with myself and say, if I tell myself I'm an entrepreneur and that's what I want to be, like I've done things the right way to get there. Now I just have to jump and I have to be ready to execute. And, it's been the best decision. I mean, you hear that. I heard it from 50 people before I did it that you're never going to regret it. And at this point, I'm so glad I did it.
All right, that was good. I got something better though. What
Okay.
I use, and you said it as you were talking about that, it's just second nature for you. You probably didn't even realize you were saying it, although I know it's fully intentional. You kept saying, we decided, we this, we that. And I know that is, that is a true we with your wife, Angie. So I would say, Angie, you got to have an Angie. You got to have
Yeah,
somebody amazing like an Angie
you
to be
do.
able to pull off something like that. So shout
You
out
do.
to Angie.
Yeah, thank you for acknowledging that because that is 100% true. I mean, if you're not a team and if you're not on the same page, it can be real scary. And so, going back to the quick story about the franchise that struggled for us, I mean, if I didn't have her there to basically say, we're in this together, right? Like we made this decision together because, if you do that without having your partner, your wife, or whoever that is, if you do that without their blessing, then that creates a lot of problems and a lot of tension. And so, I'm just really lucky to have somebody that's like in my corner and, a lot smarter than I am, to be honest with you.
So not lucky. It's you guys built that intentionally. Last thing I will say is, we're talking about we lost hundreds of thousands of dollars in that, both each of us
Mm-hmm.
in that one franchise. And I never shy away from talking about my losses. That's not the only loss that I've had in franchising. Last thing I will say, you and I've saved multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars from making the wrong decision in a different franchise where we had the opportunity to buy stuff at 90 cents on the dollar and we said no. So I think we saved ourselves even more money, even though it doesn't feel very good.
No,
We
no.
did learn some lessons.
There's always a silver lining. I mean, it's just you can turn some of those losses into tax savings elsewhere, and you can do. I mean, you just if all you do is have one failure and you give up, that's really where you're going wrong, right? You just
Yeah.
have to keep trying.
All right, Scott, I'll give this a 10 out of 10, my friend.
So that's good, man. Well, maybe somebody will listen to it someday.
Thanks for listening to the Franchise Secrets podcast. Links to everything can be found over at franchisesecrets.com. And if you want my help with anything from starting your own franchise to growing your current franchise business, please visit scalablefranchise.com.